I didn't realize my own family was stealing from me until a federal investigator slid the evidence across the table. And when I confronted them, they called me paranoid, unstable, said I was imagining everything. But the deeper I looked, the clearer it became. Forged signatures, manipulated medical records, and money quietly moving while my grandfather was losing control. And that's when I understood this wasn't just betrayal. This was a calculated family revenge against me. So I didn't stop them. I let them keep going until the case escalated to federal charges. And at exactly 8:42 in the morning, agents hit both locations at the same time. And by the end of it, the same people who tried to erase me were the ones being led away, sentenced to prison. And the part they never saw coming was this. I was never the victim in their story. I was the one who made sure it ended. Chapter 1. The account that shouldn't exist. I thought I was closing my grandfather's account. Instead, I found something that shouldn't exist, an account no one in my family had ever told me about. I pulled into the bank parking lot in Cedar Ridge just after 9. The air had that cold bite that wakes you up whether you're ready or not. I sat there for a second with both hands on the wheel, telling myself this was just another task, one more thing to finish after the funeral, one more box to check so everything could move on. It had been 3 weeks since we buried him. 3 weeks of quiet calls, casseroles I didn't ask for, and paperwork that kept showing up like it had no end. This was supposed to be simple. Inside, nothing had changed. Same low hum, same polite voices, same burnt coffee smell. I had been there with him so many times I didn't need to look around. He used to joke that the bank trusted him more than his doctor ever did. I checked in, gave my name, and waited. A few minutes later, a man stepped out and called for me. Daniel Reeves, late 50s, calm, the kind of person who doesn't waste words. We shook hands. He led me into his office. I sat down, placed my folder on the desk, and slid it toward him. Death certificate, ID, everything they told me to bring. I was ready to sign, close it, and leave. Daniel opened the file and started scanning. At first, it was routine. Then he slowed down. Most people wouldn't notice it, but I did. He asked me to confirm my name, my date of birth, my relationship to my grandfather. I answered without thinking. Then he stopped. Not long, just enough to feel it. He turned slightly toward his screen. His eyes narrowed a bit, like he was rereading something. The room didn't change, but something in it tightened. He leaned back. There is a small issue we need to clarify before we proceed. My stomach dropped. What kind of issue? He tapped a few keys, paused again. There appears to be an additional account associated with your grandfather that is not listed in the primary file. Additional account. He said it like it was nothing, but it didn't sound small, not the way he hesitated before saying it. I frowned. I was with my grandfather almost every week toward the end. I drove him places, I helped sort his paperwork when his hands started to shake. If there had been another account, I would have seen something, unless I wasn't supposed to. The thought came quick. I don't understand. What kind of account? At this point, we need to complete a compliance review before I can share further details. It is standard procedure when there are discrepancies. Discrepancies? That word stuck. I nodded anyway. Okay, what do you need from me? He printed forms and slid them across the desk. I picked up the pen. The room felt quieter now. While I signed, I watched him. He stayed neutral, professional, but there was something under it. Not panic, not suspicion, more like he knew more than he was saying and was careful about it. When he finished, he gathered everything into a new folder. We will contact you once compliance clears the review, 1 to 2 business days. I stood, thanked him, and walked out. The lobby looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. Outside, the cold hit harder. I got into my car and closed the door, but I didn't start it. Additional account. I said it out loud this time. My grandfather was the kind of man who kept every receipt, labeled, filed, stacked in boxes that went back years. He once drove across town because a cashier gave him too much change. He didn't forget accounts. He didn't hide money, unless he had a reason, or someone gave him one. I leaned back and stared ahead. Something he said a while back came to mind. We were in his living room, late afternoon. I remember going through his mail while he watched TV. Nothing special, just normal. At one point, he looked over and said, "Not everything in this family is what it looks like. I didn't even look up. You mean the bills or the people? The people. That was it. No explanation, no follow-up, just went back to watching like it didn't matter. I let it go at the time. Now it didn't feel like nothing. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. An email. From the bank. I opened it. Short, formal, they asked me to come back to the branch to complete additional documentation related to asset verification. Multiple items required review. Multiple. Not just one account. I read it again. If there were assets I didn't know about, then someone had been handling them. And if I didn't know, someone else did. People don't hide accounts like that for no reason, and they don't hide them from the person who was there every week. I thought about my mother. I thought about my brother. All the times I was told not to worry, that things were handled, that I didn't need to get involved. I set the phone down. For the first time since the funeral, the grief shifted into something else, something sharper. If that account was real, then someone close to him had been moving money I never saw. And for the first time in my life, something didn't sit right. If there really was money I didn't know about, then someone in my family had been lying to me for a long time. Chapter 2. The version they wanted me to believe. I didn't wait for them to call again. 2 days later, I was back at the bank before they even unlocked the doors. I sat in my car watching the entrance, going over everything in my head. The extra account, the way Daniel paused, the email about multiple assets. None of it felt small anymore. When the doors opened, I went straight inside. Daniel was already expecting me, but this time he wasn't alone. There was a woman standing beside him, mid-40s, sharp eyes, composed in a way that made it clear she wasn't there for small talk. Daniel introduced her as Nina Park from compliance. That word again. We walked into the same office, but it didn't feel like the same room. Nina sat across from me with a folder already open. She didn't ease into it. "We're going to review some account activity connected to your grandfather," she said. "Some of it may raise questions." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. It already had. She turned the folder toward me. Rows of numbers, dates, transfers. No names attached, no descriptions, just movement. I leaned forward. "What am I looking at?" "These are transactions from the secondary account we mentioned." I scanned the page. The amounts weren't small. They started steady around 2014. Then they grew. Slowly at first, then faster. By 2018, the numbers were hard to ignore. They weren't just expenses. They were deliberate. "Where is this going?" I asked. Nina didn't rush her answer. "We're still verifying the receiving accounts. Some of them are structured in a way that doesn't immediately identify ownership." Structured. That sounded intentional. I kept staring at the pattern. Same spacing, same timing. "This isn't random," I said. "No, it isn't." She let that sit for a second. Then she added something that shifted everything. "There are indicators that this activity does not match the documented health condition of your grandfather during certain periods." My chest tightened. I knew exactly what she was pointing at. My mother had been clear about it. He started declining in 2018. He couldn't manage things anymore. That's when she stepped in. That was the story, but the numbers in front of me didn't match it. If he wasn't capable, then someone else was moving that money, and whoever it was didn't stop. They increased it. "That doesn't make sense," I said. "If he wasn't well, how is this happening?" Nina looked at me steadily. "That is part of what we are trying to determine." Of course it was. Everything was something they were trying to determine. I leaned back and rubbed my hands together. 2016. That was when things at home started to shift. I didn't see it clearly back then, but I remembered moments, small ones. I was in the kitchen one afternoon. My mother was sitting at the table with a stack of papers, bills, statements, things she had started handling more and more. I asked if she needed help. She didn't look up. "I've got it." I remember smiling. "I can help. It's not complicated." "That's not the point." She looked at me then. "You don't understand how things work in this family." That was it. She went back to what she was doing like the conversation was over. At the time, I let it go. Now, it didn't feel like nothing. I shifted forward again. There's more, isn't there? Nina nodded. There is one entity that appears repeatedly in connection with these transfers. She turned another page. A name sat there. Hawthorne Financial Group, LLC. I didn't recognize it. What is that? We're still reviewing its role, she said, but the timing is relevant. I looked at the date, 2018. Same year everything supposedly fell apart. Same year I was told he couldn't even recognize people some days. My pulse picked up. Do you know who owns it? The ownership is layered, she said, but there are individuals connected to it that we are examining. I pulled out my phone. Give me a second. I searched the name. Basic listing, clean records, nothing that stood out. Then I saw it. A name tied to the registration. Ethan Cole. My brother. I stared at the screen for a second longer than I should have. That's not right, I said quietly. Daniel shifted slightly. What is it? I turned the phone toward them. That name, that's my brother. Neither of them reacted. Nina just watched me. That is helpful, she said. Helpful. Like this was something they expected to confirm eventually. I leaned back, my thoughts moving faster now. My brother started a company in 2018, the same year my grandfather was supposed to be losing his memory, the same year these transfers started getting bigger. I looked back at the numbers, then at the company, then at my phone again. It wasn't proof, but it wasn't nothing. I replayed things in my head. Family dinners, conversations that went nowhere, questions that got brushed off. Every time I asked about money, about what was going on, about why things felt different, they shut it down. Not gently, not by accident, on purpose. It wasn't just control, it was exclusion. They didn't just handle things, they made sure I stayed out of it. There's one more item, Nina said. She pointed to a single transaction, bigger than the others. The date hit me immediately. I knew that week. That was when my mother told me he didn't recognize her anymore. That's when she said things were getting worse. I stared at the number. It didn't match that story, not even close. If he couldn't recognize people, he wasn't moving money like this, which meant someone else was. I felt something settle in. Not confusion, not even shock. Something colder. The version I had been given didn't line up with what actually happened, and the more I thought about it, the more it felt like that wasn't a mistake. I wasn't just missing information, I was kept away from it. And the more I thought about it then, the more it felt like that wasn't new. It felt planned. Chapter 3. The Night I Had to Pretend. I didn't say anything to them. Not that night, not the next morning. I let everything sit, even though it kept replaying in my head. The numbers, the company, Ethan's name, the way my mother had been so calm about everything for years. I told myself I needed to be careful. So when my mother texted about dinner, I said yes. Same place as always, a quiet restaurant just off Maple Avenue. We had been going there long enough that the staff didn't ask questions and we didn't need menus. That was the part that got to me. Everything looked exactly the same. Ethan was already there when I walked in. He lifted a hand, casual, like nothing had changed. My mother stood up and hugged me. "You look tired," she said. "Long week," I told her. We sat down, ordered drinks. The same small talk started rolling like it always did. Traffic, weather, work. They didn't mention my grandfather. They didn't mention the estate. They didn't mention money. It was like that part of our lives had been quietly removed from the conversation. Ethan started talking about his company. Nothing specific, just general updates. A few new clients, some projects that might grow. I listened. I watched the way he spoke, the way he kept things just vague enough, the way my mother nodded like she already knew everything he was about to say. They sat across from me talking like nothing had changed, while I was the only one who didn't know the truth. I took a sip of water and decided to push just a little. "How is the company doing lately?" I asked. Ethan paused. It was small, almost invisible. "It is fine," he said. Nothing out of the ordinary. That was it. No details, no follow-up. He wasn't just avoiding the question, he was controlling it. I nodded like I believed him. I didn't. He wasn't just hiding something. He was sitting there looking right at me like I didn't deserve to know. The food came. Plates were set down, conversations kept moving, but I wasn't really part of them anymore. I was watching, waiting. My phone lit up on the table. I didn't want to look, but I did. An email notification. From the bank. The subject line hit me instantly. Transaction review update. My hand froze for a second. Ethan noticed. Work? He asked. I flipped the phone over, keeping my voice steady. Yeah, just a client issue. He kept looking at me a moment longer than he needed to. Those are the worst, he said. My mother glanced between us. Everything okay? Yeah, I said. Nothing serious. She smiled, but it felt practiced. Good. We don't need more stress right now. There was a pause after that. Short, but heavy. I knew I was one wrong move away from giving something away, so I stayed quiet. I let them talk. I played along. By the time dinner ended, I felt like I had been holding tension in my chest the entire time. We walked out together. The night air was colder than I expected. My mother hugged me again. Call me tomorrow, she said. We should go over a few things. What kind of things? Just things that need to be handled. I nodded. Okay. Ethan gave me a light tap on the shoulder. Get some rest, he said. You look like you need it. I forced a small smile. I will. They got into their car and drove off. I stood there for a moment, watching the taillights disappear. Then I got into my car. I didn't go home. I drove across town instead. Margaret Sullivan's office was in an older building that most people probably ignored. Second floor, small sign on the door. You would miss it if you weren't looking. She had been my grandfather's attorney for years. If anyone knew what was really going on, it would be her. I knocked and stepped inside. She was sitting at her desk, reading under a small lamp. She looked up. There was no surprise on her face. You finally came, she said. I stopped near the doorway. What do you mean, finally? She leaned back slightly, studying me. I was wondering how long it would take you to see it. My chest tightened. You knew something was wrong? She reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder. It wasn't new. The edges were worn, like it had been opened more than once. I had concerns, she said, for a while now. About what? About the way decisions were being made, about who was making them. She opened the folder and turned it toward me. Notes, dates, copies of documents. This went back to 2020. I stepped closer. Why didn't you tell me? She met my eyes. Because your grandfather told me not to. That stopped me. He knew? He suspected enough, she said. Enough to start watching. Then why didn't he stop it? Because he wanted to understand it first. That didn't sit right. Or maybe he wanted it to reveal itself. The room felt quieter. What was he waiting for? I asked. She didn't hesitate. Someone who wasn't already part of the events. The words landed slowly. Someone who wouldn't accept the version of events they were being given. I felt something drop in my stomach. Meaning me? She didn't soften it. Yes. I looked back down at the folder. All this time? He knew it was happening. He just needed someone who wouldn't ignore it. And you helped? I followed his instructions, she said. What were they? She closed the folder halfway. Wait. That was it. Wait until the truth was clear. Wait until someone saw it without being told what to believe. I let out a slow breath. And now? She studied me for a moment. Now you decide what happens next. I didn't answer, because I already knew something had changed.
I wasn't just looking at a problem anymore. I was inside it. I picked up the folder, feeling the weight of it in my hands. I wasn't just part of this now. I was exactly who he had been waiting for. And the worst part was, I was starting to understand why.
Chapter 4. The Move They Didn't See Coming. I didn't rush into anything after that. If they had been building this for years, I wasn't going to be the one who slipped at the end. I started with the records. Every transaction Nina had flagged, I copied. Dates, amounts, patterns. Then I laid them next to my grandfather's medical files that Margaret helped me access. The timing didn't just look wrong, it lined up too cleanly. Transfers increased right when his condition was supposed to be getting worse. Not random, not careless, controlled. I took everything back to Nina. She didn't react at first, just went through it slowly, like she was checking for something I might have missed. Then she looked up. This changes things. How much? Enough that this isn't just compliance anymore. That was the shift. Not a suspicion, not a mistake, something real. She made a call right there. 2 days later, I was sitting across from Detective Aaron Blake. He didn't waste time trying to impress me. No attitude, no pressure, just steady. He looked at the documents, then at me. You connected this yourself. I followed what didn't make sense. He gave a small nod. That's usually how it starts. We walked through everything again. Accounts, company structure, timeline. He didn't interrupt, but I saw the moment it clicked. He leans back slightly and tapped the folder. This is structured. I'd heard that word before. What does that mean? It means this wasn't sloppy. Someone built this to look clean. Fake signatures, layered transfers, a company that existed just enough to pass a basic check. Not one mistake, a system. Something in my chest settled. Not fear, clarity. What happens now? We verify, then we move. 3 weeks passed. Nothing changed on the surface. I still had dinner with my mother. I still sat across from Ethan while he talked like everything was normal. I still nodded in the right places. But underneath, everything felt different. Every word carried weight. Every pause meant something. Every glance lasted a second too long. One night, Ethan leans back and studied me. You've been quiet. Just tired. That's not it. My mother looked between us. What are you talking about? Ethan didn't take his eyes off me. I think she's hiding something. The room went still. I met his gaze. What do you think I'm hiding? He held it, then leaned back. If I knew that, I wouldn't have to ask. My mother forced a laugh. This is ridiculous. It didn't sound convincing. I picked up my glass. You're overthinking it. He didn't push, but I could tell. He felt it, he just didn't understand it yet. And that was the only reason I still had time. The message came on a Wednesday morning, 8:42. My phone buzzed once on the counter. Aaron. 2 words. It's time. No hesitation. I grabbed my keys and walked out. I didn't go to the bank. I didn't call Margaret. I drove to the spot Blake told me to wait. From there, I could see enough. 2 locations, my mother's house, Ethan's office. They moved at the same time. Unmarked cars first, then marked units, then everything at once. Doors, voices, movement. Fast, controlled, no chaos. At my mother's house, she stepped outside looking confused, then calm, too calm. She was talking, explaining, trying to stay in control. At Ethan's office, it was different. He didn't stay calm. Even from a distance, I could see it. Sharp movements, raised voice, hands everywhere. He knew exactly what was happening. That was the difference. One thought she could talk her way out of it. The other knew there was no way out. They thought they were in control the whole time. They thought everything was clean. They thought no one was looking close enough. What they didn't realize was I was the one putting it all together. I didn't stop them.
I let them keep going, long enough that when it broke, it couldn't be fixed. Hours passed when Aaron called. Same steady voice. "We have what we need." I didn't ask. I already knew. "Signatures were forged," he said. "No doubt." That was it. No more questions, no more waiting, just truth. I sat in my car for a while after that, not thinking, just letting it settle. Later that night, I went back to Margaret's office. She was already waiting. She handed me an envelope. "Your grandfather left this for you." I stared at it for a second before opening it. His handwriting. I read it once, then again. He knew. Not everything, but enough. He knew something wasn't right. He knew who might be involved. But he didn't stop it. He watched. He waited. He wanted to see who would notice, who would question it, who wouldn't just accept what they were told. I lowered the paper slowly. Your grandfather could have stopped it. Margaret didn't argue. He chose not to. Why? She held my gaze. Because stopping it would have buried it. That landed. Stopping it would have protected them. Letting it play out exposed everything. I folded the letter carefully. For the first time since this started, everything felt clear. Not easy, not better, but clear. I wasn't just the one who saw it. I wasn't just the one who followed it. I was the one who let it play out until the truth had nowhere left to hide. And now that it was over, there was only one thing left they hadn't faced yet. Me.
Chapter 5. What was taken, what remained. I didn't go to see them right away. For a while, I thought I should, that I needed to stand there, look them in the eye, say something that would finally close it. But the truth was, nothing I said would change what they had done, and nothing they said would change what I already knew. So I let time do what it needed to do. 8 months passed before I saw them again. By then, everything had been taken apart, every transfer traced, every document reviewed, every excuse tested until it broke under its own weight. The trial was held in a federal courthouse in Chicago, cold, quiet, and controlled, the kind of place where the truth does not need to be loud. I sat in the second row, close enough to see everything, far enough that I didn't feel pulled into it. When they brought my mother in, she still carried herself the same way, shoulders straight, chin slightly lifted, like she could still control how people saw her. But there was something thinner underneath it now. Not fear, just the beginning of something cracking. Ethan came in after her. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, just less certain, like whatever confidence he used to wear had been stripped away piece by piece. He didn't look at me. I didn't need him to. The charges were read clearly. Fraud, forgery, money laundering, exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Each one landed without drama, just weight. The prosecution didn't rush. They built it slowly. Transaction timelines laid out next to medical records that had been adjusted to match them. Signature comparisons that left no room for doubt. It wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern, a system they thought would hold. My mother tried to keep her version intact. She said everything she did was for the family. She said she was protecting what my grandfather built. She said she made decisions others were too weak to make. It almost sounded reasonable, if you didn't know the full story. But the full story was sitting right there, and this time, no one was looking away. Ethan handled it differently. He admitted to parts of it, not everything, just enough to make it look like cooperation. It wasn't regret, it was calculation. Even now, he was still trying to manage the outcome, still trying to control what could not be controlled anymore. The final days of the trial were quieter. No more arguments that mattered, no more attempts to reshape what had already been proven. Just facts, and the silence that comes when there is nothing left to defend. When the verdict came, I didn't react. No relief, no anger, just stillness. My mother was found guilty across the board. Her sentence was long enough to end the life she had built outside those walls. Ethan received less time, but it was enough. Enough to take everything he thought he was building with him. They thought they were in control the entire time. They thought they could move everything quietly, cleanly, without anyone seeing the full picture. In the end, they lost more than they ever took, and I walked away with something they never had. The real ending didn't happen when the sentences were read. It happened after, when the room emptied, when the voices faded, when there was nothing left but what remained. I stayed seated for a while, not because I needed to, just because I wanted to feel it fully, the quiet, the absence, the fact that it was actually over. I stood up and walked out without looking back. A few days later, I returned to Halstead Financial. Same building, same offices, but it didn't feel the same. This time, no one questioned why I was there. No hesitation, no quiet doubt about whether I belonged. The paperwork was straightforward. Transfer of remaining assets, authorization, final confirmation. I read everything carefully, not because I didn't trust it, but because I had learned what happens when you don't look closely. When I signed my name, it didn't feel dramatic. It felt steady. For the first time, no one could rewrite my place in this story. My name stood on its own, clear, unquestioned. No one standing over it, no one deciding if it mattered. I understood then what my grandfather had really left behind. It was never just money, it was clarity, the ability to see what didn't make sense and not look away from it, the choice to trust that instinct, even when it would have been easier not to. I walked out into the afternoon and stood there for a moment. The world hadn't changed. People moved the same way. Traffic passed like it always did. But something in me had shifted. I didn't feel like I had won. That wasn't the word for it. It was quieter than that, more grounded, like something that had been off balance for a long time had finally settled. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the letter my grandfather left me. I read it again, not for answers, just to remember. He had seen enough to know something wasn't right, but he also understood that forcing the truth too early would only bury it. Some things need to reveal themselves. Some people only show who they really are when they believe no one is watching. And sometimes the only way to end it is to let it unfold until it can't hide anymore. If you've ever had someone close to you make you question your own judgment, then you understand how deep that kind of damage goes. It's not just about what they take, it's what they make you doubt. Your instincts, your memory, your sense of what is real. Getting that back doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly. But when it does, it stays. The truth doesn't always free you right away. Sometimes it just gives you something smaller. The ability to stand your ground, the ability to trust yourself again. And sometimes that's enough. If you've ever been in that place where the truth felt harder than staying quiet, I want to hear your story. Not the version someone else told, your version. Because sometimes saying it out loud is the moment everything starts to shift. And if this meant something to you, stay with the channel. There are more stories like this. Stories where the truth takes time, but it always finds its way to the surface.